What is going on, guys? Prometheus back here yet again with another episode of Risk, Reward, and Fire. Before we get started, I need you guys to slam the like button, hit the subscribe, turn on post notifications. Talking about on-chain madness. What is going on with on-chain right now? Obviously seeing a lot of rotations into BSC. Liquidity's a little bit thin. That's what I'm going to touch on quite a bit. What should I be doing to really be positioning for Q4? Like I said, we're going to start here off with the majors, Ethereum, Bitcoin. And if you look at particularly the move or the range that we put in on from Ethereum from August up until September, the beginning of September, or the second week of September, excuse me, we saw largely altcoins be dominating the sector. We saw a lot of outperformance. We saw majors ranging and on-chain, and really alts do, for the most part, very, very well in that regard. Now, on-chain, as of recently, like I said, has been suffering, and there's a reason for that. That reason is typically because of liquidity flushes and cascades across the board, dry out and dry up a lot of the liquidity within the sector. And when you're doing that, you're ultimately creating an environment that it takes time, in which it takes time for on-chain to come back, and for that, the newer liquidity to make its way back out onto the risk curve. Because what do people do when they get liquidated? Generally speaking, or when they see markets are, quote unquote, downtrending, or, we're reaching some form of peak fear, people tend to rotate out of on-chain, and a lot of that cross collateralization that we see within the sector then dries up. People using Ethereum, to lend, and then taking that on chain, they then liquidate themselves, and yada yada yada. You guys kind of get the point. But here locally, we're seeing some pretty interesting dynamics occur. So that dynamics that I'm talking about is what we saw previously, back in the end of September, where you had this liquidation cascade on ETH, and you had liquidation cascade on Bitcoin, right? Down to 108 for Bitcoin, down to 3,900 for ETH. We caught this long here on the Discord. It was a very, very, very nice position. But with this most recent move up that we've seen out of majors, i.e. Bitcoin and ETH back up to their range highs, Bitcoin obviously making new all-time highs, Ethereum sat just underneath 4,800 before we saw this most recent pullback. Altcoins didn't follow, and that was really tough pill to swallow for a lot of the market participants. And they don't understand that, okay, typically what you see in a move but a move following this liquidation cascade is you're going to be seeing a major dominated market for some time, right? It takes time for liquidity, like I said, to make itself out onto the risk curve. And so generally speaking, what happens is it's going to potentially take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. If we do start to see, Ethereum continue to remain within its range here, with Bitcoin seeing some form of basing out occur and break higher in majors, it's still going to take a little bit of time for on-chain to really heat up across the board. Now, if we look back at previous expansionary periods, and we compare the total 3ES chart, with Bitcoin, and we can kind of look and see how liquidity behaves, right? Let me get this set up here for you guys. That way we can get a little bit of insight into what and when is occurring. What is occurring and when is liquidity flowing out onto the risk curve. So, just looking at prior expansionary periods here on Bitcoin, for instance, right? We saw, for instance, Bitcoin back in July break its all-time high and go up to, from 108 up to 125, and total 3ES, did not break out of its local high until July 16th, whereas Bitcoin broke out on July 10th. So typically takes about a week for those rotational effects to occur. Now, if we also look back at the lows set back at the end of June, right? Bitcoin set its low in and had a really nice V recovery and started chopping and ranging towards all-time highs, whereas Total 3 ES did not come off its floor significantly for several weeks, right? Did not come off its floor until Bitcoin actually broke out to new all-time highs. That's a great example showing that it takes time for, after we have liquidity flushes, like for instance what we had back in June of 23, where it takes time for that liquidity to make its way back out into altcoins, and altcoins are probably going to be laggards for quite some time. We can look very similarly to what we saw back in April of this year, right, where Bitcoin bottomed out in April, made a very nice expansionary move higher and continued to, break higher, whereas altcoins kind of largely led the move. Bitcoin broke its point of origin from really the sell-off, pre-tariff announcement. And if you look at Total 3, for instance, it only came up into its point of origin. It did not break its point of origin. And so really what we need to be seeing is we need to see some form of sustained period of coin to then allow for altcoins to really behave in which is indicative of, beta outperformance, altcoin outperformance. We can even look back, further, right? We saw, for instance, break out from its previous all-time highs back in November, weeks for Total 3 to see its flows, or for the flows to make its way out onto altcoins and to on-chain, right? Bitcoin broke out in November 6th of 24, and Total 3 didn't significantly break out till November 16th of 24. So, I mean, you want to talk about, that took about 11 days. So, week to 2 weeks of significant, expansionary periods from Bitcoin will then allow for more liquidity to come back towards the altcoins, and will allow for altcoins to really see some form of outperformance to the upside. So I want to just be mindful that a lot of people right now are very, very, very hesitant when it comes to on-chain behavior, because it's very, very thin. Liquidity is very thin on-chain. Rotations are becoming even faster. We saw the rotation from Avantis to Aster, from Aster to Stable, Stable to XPL, and each one didn't even last a week. And if you look at previously within the cycle, the run-ups from a lot of the majors that have done, or from a lot of the tickers that have done well, that have gone over well over $1 billion market caps, typically those do well for, multi-month period. And we're just not currently seeing that right now. And what is it going to take for a lot of these names to kind of have some form of catch up back to the upside? It's going to be Bitcoin and price discovery. It's going to be significant, expansionary period, allowing for that rotational effects to occur, for on-chain to do well. Like, that is ultimately what we need, guys. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because a lot of people are thinking that, altcoins will never see any liquidity again. It's just drying up more and more and more and more. Well, based off of what I just showed you from Total 3, after we have capitulatory events, it's very apparent that altcoins are going to be some form of laggard for some time, and it typically precedes some form of expansionary period from Bitcoin, and then you'll likely see altcoins catch up, within a week to two, and you'll be able to catch probably some really nice runners on chain. But until then, you want to kind of be a little bit cautious here, especially with, Bitcoin sweeping its highs, seeing a little bit of a pullback from those said highs. My line in the sand here for Bitcoin, guys, is you got to remain above 117. That'd be a structural retest and is a very, very, very important level on the chart. For Ethereum, you got to kind of remain above 4250. It's another very important area within its current range. The list kind of goes on and on and on. But ultimately speaking, if I just look at the structures here, like looking at XRP, something we've touched on, I hope you guys got a little glimpse into some alpha into some positioning. But looking at XRP here, guys, looking at Doge, looking at some of the other names, I would be very shocked if this turns into some form of sustained pullback period, just based off of the structures that I'm seeing, right? Everything's leading me to believe that Q4 is still going to be very, very, very strong for the broader sector as a whole. And I want to remain in that camp, especially with Bitcoin being at really only 2% off of its all-time highs. Like, why would I want to be bullish here or bearish here? Excuse me. I want to remain bullish. I think we're in a high time frame bullish regime, and I'm going to continue to harp on that until we see structures change. If Bitcoin comes back up here towards the highs and we see further weakness, going to be mindful of that, obviously. But until then, I want to kind of remain bullish on the local structure. So that's what I'm seeing, guys. I hope this information was good information for you. I hope it is, tangible information that you guys are going to be able to use in your trading journeys, and it's going to allow you some insight, or give you some insight, into kind of where we're headed and what to expect when it comes to leverage flushes, how altcoins are going to perform out of those leverage flushes, and from there, just go by what the charts are telling you. That's the most important thing. You're going to hear a ton of noise on CT. Charts are telling you that typically, these flushes, after these flushes in Bitcoin-led rallies are typically preceding expansionary moves in the broader altcoins, or in the broader sector as a whole. And altcoins will follow typically a week to two from then. And you can start to position in altcoins if you do see a break of Bitcoin, expecting for larger liquidity to flood in and be a little bit early to those trades. So that being said, guys, Prometheus here with you as always. I will see you guys later. Peace out.